Do you think you should have done that in the middle of this pandemic?
I talked to him last night. He was felt like he needs to get out on the campaign trail. I know Vice President Biden's out campaigning. I think it's good to be campaigning. Yes, sir.
Can I talk to you about, you raised the issue of your own election here in the middle of this hearing. Is that appropriate?
I think it's pretty appropriate for me to respond to political attacks in a political way. If you didn't catch it, all day yesterday was attacks on the ACA. They mentioned 3 times South Carolina. What would happen if the ACA is repealed? I thought it was fair for me to say my position is there's a better way for South Carolina. So yes, I think I have a right to respond to political arguments politically, and I wanted to make sure the difference between our political debate about the ACA and how it would be decided in the court was important. Thank you.
Thanks, Chairman. How subtle is that? There's no subtlety there. So it isn't a question of the composition of the court, it's a question of making sure that the justices on the court will be objective and fair.
How do you think that she's going to be reacting one way already? Do you think that she's already had that conversation with the
She
president?
says she's not had that conversation, but, you know, when Senator Cornyn keeps saying this is insulting to suggest you're going to the court with an agenda, he ought to direct that emotion to the White House. They're the ones who keep peddling this story every day, and why we raise the question. That's it.
Thanks, Senator.
Day 2 of Judge Amy Coney Barrett's confirmation hearing got underway just after 9 a.m. Eastern this morning. 7 Judiciary Committee members have asked their questions so far, 30 minutes allotted for each senator to ask their questions. 4 Republicans have asked their questions, 3 Democrats. Most senators using up their full 30 minutes, although notably Chuck Grassley, the Republican from Iowa, using just 20 minutes of his time this morning. John Cornyn, the Republican from Texas, using just 12 minutes of his allotted 30 minutes this morning. The Judiciary Committee breaking for lunch right now. When we come back, we'll hear from Sheldon Whitehouse next, the Democrat from Rhode Island. But until then, updating you on the latest, keeping tabs on what's happening both inside the hearing room in the Hart Senate office building and also outside the hearing room as well. A couple of tweets this morning offering some different images from what you've been seeing from the camera angles inside the confirmation hearing, including this tweet from Trish Turner of ABC News, showing the desk where Judge Amy Coney Barrett is sitting, noting that there's no notes there at the desk. There is that pad provided by the Senate, by the Judiciary Committee. The last time she was asked to hold up that pad, she hadn't written anything on that pad. Also inside the hearing room, you may have noticed that Senators Thom Tillis and Mike Lee are both in the Senate Judiciary Committee, both having tested positive for COVID earlier this month. The tweet from Manu Raju noting that neither has said that they have tested negative, but both said that they've been cleared by their doctors to return to the public under CDC guidelines. We saw Mike Lee yesterday speaking on the opening day of Amy Coney Barrett's confirmation hearings. Today, Senator Thom Tillis released a doctor's note noting that he had been cleared to return to the hearings in person. That doctor's note available on his website. The doctor, Jack Fahrenkopf, saying that I'm happy to report that since the senator has had such a mild case of COVID-19 and has such a strong immune system, you are free to return to work without any restrictions as of October the 13th, as of today. A few more tweets about the hearing and the substance of the hearing. This from C-SPAN's Capitol Hill producer, Craig Kaplan, quote, no hints, no previews, no forecasts, end quote. Judge Barrett cites the Ginsburg rule on how Supreme Court nominees should answer questions at their Senate Judiciary Committee confirmation hearings about issues in the law that might come before the court if confirmed. Politico with a story about the Ginsburg rule, something that the pros they write are watching for at Barrett's confirmation hearing. When it comes to the Ginsburg rule, here's what Politico writes about it. The phrase that Republicans have seized on comes from the standard that the late Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg laid out during her 1993 hearing on her nomination to the High Court. In her opening statement, this is what Ruth Bader Ginsburg said. It would be wrong for me to say or to preview in this legislative chamber how I would cast my vote on questions the Supreme Court may be called upon to decide. She went on to say, were I to rehearse here what I would say and how I would reason on such questions, I would act injudiciously. Judges in our system are bound to decide concrete cases, not abstract issues. A judge sworn to decide impartially can offer no forecasts, no hints, and no previews. And that topic coming up quite a bit throughout the first 3 hours, a little over 3 hours of today's confirmation hearing. One issue in particular, one exchange in which Judge Barrett declined to offer her opinion, has gotten a lot of attention. Here's the Washington Post story about it. Judge Barrett declined to answer when Senator Dianne Feinstein, the Democrat from California, the ranking member of the Judiciary Committee, asked her whether the Constitution gives the president the authority to unilaterally delay an election, an idea that President Trump has floated. The president has no explicit power to take such a step, the Washington Post notes. Barrett said that she would have to consult colleagues and clerks and listen to arguments. She said that if she gave an off-the-cuff answer, she would basically be, quote, a legal pundit. That from the Washington Post, if you want to read more. We mentioned that 7 members of the Judiciary Committee have asked their questions so far, have taken most of their 30 minutes. Some tweets from other members of the Judiciary Committee coming up later today, watching the hearings, reacting on Twitter. Senator Cory Booker, the Democrat from New Jersey. This was what he wrote just after 10 a.m. this morning. He said, it doesn't matter to Donald Trump and Mitch McConnell that millions of families rely on the Affordable Care Act. This rushed Supreme Court nomination process is a shameful attempt to strike down this life-saving legislation. And then from the other side of the aisle, Senator Marsha Blackburn, the Republican of Tennessee, saying about a little bit after 10:30 a.m., rather than discuss Judge Barrett's qualifications, Senate Democrats are creating hysteria over health care to toy with America's emotions. You can continue to follow on C-SPAN's Twitter feeds the reaction from members of Congress, lists for members of the Senate and for all members of Congress that you can subscribe to, that you can follow. We mentioned we were keeping tabs on what's happening inside the hearing, but also outside the hearing room. Here's one of the scenes from Capitol Hill, this tweet from Burgess Everett of Politico, showing that bus, Women for Amy. It's the bus that was launched by the Concerned Women for America. Their bus tour hitting D.C. and Pennsylvania and Ohio and Indiana. A picture of Judge Barrett on the side of that pink bus that this morning has been driving around up here on Capitol Hill. We're expecting the Senate Judiciary Committee to come back at about 12:45 Eastern this morning, and we're hoping to hear from you during this lunch break. We're asking you what question you would ask Judge Amy Coney Barrett if you were in the Judiciary Committee hearing. What questions would you want her to answer? Here's how we're splitting up our phone lines this morning. Republicans can call in at 202-748-8921. Democrats, 202-748-8920. Others, 202-748-8922. And if you want to text us this morning, you can do that, 202-748-8903. If you do, please include your name and where you're from in your text. You can go ahead and start calling in now. We'd love to hear your questions, what you would ask if you were in the hearing room. As you are calling in, I want to show you some of the exchanges this morning between various senators and Judge Barrett, including with the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee. Senator Lindsey Graham asking about judicial activism before the court, also asking about her comments about the Affordable Care Act. Here's some of those exchanges.
let's talk about the process in general. There's the Heller case. What's that about?
The Heller case is a case decided by the Supreme Court which held that the Second Amendment protects an individual right to bear arms.
Okay. Now, my friends on the left, some of them have a problem with Heller. They may try to challenge the construct of Heller. If a state or local government passed a law in defiance of Heller, what would happen?
In defiance of Heller,
Or that was challenging the construct of Heller?
that challenged the construct of Heller, if it was brought in a lower court, Heller binds. I mean, lower courts always have to follow Supreme Court precedent, and so
And
that
if the Supreme Court wanted to revisit Heller, what would they do?
if someone challenged Heller below because a state or local government passed a law contradicting Heller, the Supreme Court would have to take that case once it was appealed all the way up. So the court would have to decide, yes, we want to overrule Heller, and we have enough votes to grant cert, and then do so.
So that's the way the process works.
Yes, it would start because there was a law, then there was a lawsuit, then there was an appeal, then the court granted cert, and then the court decided the case.
Is that true no matter what the issue is? Whether it's gun, abortion, health care, campaign finance, does that process hold true for everything?
Yes, judges can't just wake up one day and say, I have an agenda, I like guns, I like abortion, I hate abortion, and walk in like a royal queen and impose, their will on the world. You have to wait for cases and controversies, which is the language of the Constitution, to wind their way through the process.
So, recusal. My colleagues are asking you to recuse yourself from litigation around the Affordable Care Act. What's the precedent regarding the Affordable Care Act, if any?
The precedent that might,
Is there precedent on this issue?
there's not precedent on the issue that's coming up before the court. It turns on a doctrine called severability, which was not an issue in either of the two big Affordable Care Act cases.
Okay, so the issue that was before the court was NFIB versus Sibelius, is that correct?
That was the first, about the constitutionality of the mandate.
Okay, and I think Congress has zeroed out what the court called a tax, and the real issue now is, does it stand and can it be severable?
Right, so the issue now is, now that Congress has zeroed it out, can it be called a tax, or is it now a penalty? And then the second issue is, if it is a penalty, can it be just cut out from the statute so that the rest of the statute, including protection for pre-existing conditions, stands?
Well, a lot smarter people than me suggest that severability would be a hard challenge for those who are opposing the law, but time will tell. Do you feel like you should recuse yourself from that case because you're being nominated by President Trump?
Well, Senator, recusal itself is a legal issue. There's a statute, 28 U.S.C. 455, that governs when judges and justices have to recuse. There's precedent under that rule. Justice Ginsburg, in explaining the way recusal works, said that it's always up to the individual justice, but it always involves consultation with the colleagues, with the other 8 justices. So that's not a question that I could answer in the abstract.
So if you're appointed by Obama, that's no reason to recuse yourself in a case involving Obama policy, is that correct?
Well, that would be a decision for each justice to make.
But if a justice had a conflict with a particular policy issue, they helped draft it, that would be a consideration, is that correct?
That would be a consideration.
Okay. So when it comes to recusing yourself, you'll do what the Supreme Court requires of every justice.
I will.
Judge Amy Coney Barrett there with the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, Lindsey Graham. And here's some more of this morning's exchanges between Judge Barrett and the ranking member of the Judiciary Committee, Dianne Feinstein.
A question that the chairman touched on, and it's of great importance, I think, because it goes to a woman's fundamental right to make the most personal decisions about their own body. And as a college student in the 1950s, I saw what happened to young women who became pregnant at a time when abortion was not legal in this country. I went to Stanford. I saw the trips to Mexico. I saw young women try to hurt themselves, and it was really deeply, deeply concerning. During her confirmation hearing, before this committee in 1993, Ruth Bader Ginsburg was asked several questions about her views on whether the Constitution protects a woman's right to abortion. She unequivocally confirmed her view that the Constitution protects a woman's right to abortion. And she explained it like this, and I quote, "The decision whether or not to bear a child is central to a woman's life, to her well-being and dignity. It's a decision she must make for herself. When government controls that decision for her, she is being treated as less than a fully adult human, responsible for her own choice," end quote. At one point, our former colleague, Orrin Hatch, then the ranking member of this committee, commended her for her being, quote, "very forthright in talking about that," end quote. So I hope, and you have been thus far, be equally forthright with your answers. In Planned Parenthood of Southeastern Pennsylvania versus Casey, Justice Scalia, as was said earlier, joined the dissent, which took the position, and I quote, "We believe that Roe was wrongly decided and that it can and should be overruled, consistent with our traditional approach to stare decisis in constitutional cases." Do you agree with Justice Scalia's view that Roe was wrongly decided?
So Senator, I do want to be forthright and answer every question so far as I can. I think on that question, I'm going to invoke Justice Kagan's description, which I think is perfectly put. When she was in her confirmation hearing, she said that she was not going to grade precedent or give it a thumbs up or a thumbs down. And I think in an area where precedent continues to be pressed and litigated, as is true of Casey, it would be particularly, it would actually be wrong and a violation of the canons for me to do that as a sitting judge. So if I express a view on a precedent one way or another, whether I say I love it or I hate it, it signals to litigants that I might tilt one way or another in a pending case.
So on something that is really a major cause with major effect on over half of the population of this country, who are women, after all, it's distressing not to get a straight answer. So let me try again. Do you agree with Justice Scalia's view that Roe was wrongly decided?
Senator, I completely understand why you are asking the question, but again, I can't pre-commit or say, yes, I'm going in with some agenda, because I'm not. I don't have any agenda. I have no agenda to try to overrule Casey. I have an agenda to stick to the rule of law and decide cases as they come.
Well, as a person, I don't know if you'll answer this one either. Do you agree with Justice Scalia's view that Roe can and should be overturned by the Supreme Court?
Well, I think my answer is the same, because, that's a case that's litigated. It could, its contours could come up again. In fact, do come up. They came up last term before the court. So I think, what the Casey standard is, and it's a contentious issue, which is, I know, one reason why it would be comforting to you to have an answer. But I can't express views on cases or pre-commit to approaching a case any particular way.
Well, that makes it difficult for me, and I think for other women also on this committee, because this is a very important case, and it affects a lot of people, millions and millions of women, and you could be a very important vote. And I had hoped you would say, as a person, you've got a lovely family, you understand all the implications of family life. You should be very proud of that. I'm proud of you for that. But my position is a little different. You're going on the biggest court of this land with a problem out there that all women see one way or another in their life. And not all, but certainly married women do, and others too. And so the question comes, what happens? And will this justice support a law that has substantial precedent now? Would you commit yourself on whether you would or would not?
Senator, what I will commit is that I will obey all the rules of stare decisis, that if a question comes up before me about whether Casey or any other case should be overruled, that I will follow the law of stare decisis, applying it as the court has articulated it, applying all the factors, reliance, workability, being undermined by later facts and law, just all the standard factors. And I promise to do that for any issue that comes up, abortion or anything else. I'll follow the law.
In 2013, as you probably know, because you know so much about this, U.S. v. Windsor, the Supreme Court struck DOMA down. 2 years later, in Obergefell v. Hodges, the Supreme Court recognized that the fundamental right to marry could not be denied to LGBT Americans. Both decisions were decided by a 5-4 margin. Justice Ginsburg was in the majority. Justice Scalia dissented in both cases. Now, you said in your acceptance speech for this nomination that Justice Scalia's philosophy is your philosophy. Do you agree with this particular point of Justice Scalia's view that the U.S. Constitution does not afford gay people the fundamental right to marry?
Senator Feinstein, as I said to Senator Graham at the outset, if I were confirmed, you would be getting Justice Barrett, not Justice Scalia. So I don't think that anybody should assume that just because Justice Scalia decided a decision a certain way, that I would too. But I'm not going to express a view on whether I agree or disagree with Justice Scalia for the same reasons that I've been giving. You know, Justice Ginsburg, with her characteristic pithiness, used this to describe how a nominee should comport herself at a hearing. No hints, no previews, no forecasts. That had been the practice of nominees before her, but everybody calls it the Ginsburg rule because she stated it so concisely, and it's been the practice of every nominee since. So I can't, and I'm sorry to not be able to embrace or disavow Justice Scalia's position, but I really can't do that on any point of law.
Well, that's really too bad because it's rather a fundamental point for large numbers of people, I think, in this country. I understand you don't want to answer these questions directly, but you identify yourself with a justice that you, like him, would be a consistent vote to roll back hard-fought freedoms and protections for the LGBT community. And what I was hoping you would say is that this would be a point of difference where those freedoms would be respected. And you haven't said that.
Senator, I have no agenda, and I do want to be clear that I have never discriminated on the basis of sexual preference and would not ever discriminate on the basis of sexual preference. You know, like racism, I think discrimination is abhorrent. On the questions of law, however, because I'm a sitting judge and because you can't answer questions without going through the judicial process, can't give answers to those very specific questions.
We're about 3 hours into day 2 of Judge Amy Coney Barrett's Supreme Court confirmation hearing. About 15 minutes left. We're expecting until senators come back to the Hart Senate office building hearing room, where that hearing has been taking place, and we're asking you to call in on phone lines split up by Republicans, Democrats, and others, asking what question you would ask if you were in the room. We're expecting about 7.5 more hours of questioning, 15 senators left to ask questions today. That would put the hearing ending sometime after 9 o'clock sometime around 9 o'clock this evening. That's with a dinner break that's expected to happen later today as well. So that's the plan for the rest of the day. I want to turn the phones over to you now, asking what question you would ask if you were in the room. Isabel is waiting in New York City, a Republican. Good morning. Go ahead.
Hello and good morning to the world. I have a question for Amy, and it is in an era where where conservatives are being openly attacked for their views in public or in front of their homes sometimes. What would you do if you felt pressured while you're a justice in the Supreme Court by others, by any other justice that works with you on a daily basis? Thank you.
This is Bell in New York. This is Edward out of Houston, Texas. A Democrat. Edward, what question would you ask if you were in the room?
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Edward. I'm a Democrat from Houston, Texas. And the question I would ask Supreme Court nominee Amy Coney Barrett was, she keeps stating that you have no hints or no forecast on how you proceed with rulings if confirmed. But it seems as if you're already showing how you will proceed with hearings and rulings because of how you answer every Republican senator's questions with open arms. But with Democrats, you're very closed to the questions and answers. So I would ask, again, how you would proceed with ruling if given the opportunity to get confirmed.
Matthew is back in New York, Oyster Bay, New York. That line for others, good morning, go ahead.
Hi, yeah, I'm just calling because I would ask Justice Barrett, everybody has the case briefs, everybody has all the written things available for each case, everything that the justices currently sitting on the Supreme Court would have. I think that it is really improper for anybody being appointed to the Supreme Court to be so shady, mischievous, and obfuscate their answers so much when asked about a policy or legal opinion. We're electing and we're putting these people on the court to say their opinions and tell us their opinions. And by doing so and hiding behind old dogmas of the Supreme Court, I think that any person being nominated really violates the independence and the things that they should share with the public.
That's Matthew in New York. Matthew said, Justice Barrett, it's Judge Barrett for now. Judge Barrett serving on the 7th Circuit Court of Appeals. If she does become Justice Barrett, several more steps need to take place. Here's the road ahead for Judge Barrett. After today's hearing, there will be tomorrow and Thursday, additional hearings in the Hart Senate Office Building, that room that you're seeing on your screen. Tomorrow's hearing includes 2 rounds of questioning. Today's rounds of questioning is one 30-minute round. Tomorrow we're expecting a 20-minute round, followed by a 10-minute round of questions. And then on Thursday, additional witnesses will be invited before the Senate Judiciary Committee to testify about Judge Barrett. And then we found out yesterday the scheduling of the vote for the committee vote for Judge Barrett. That expected to take place on October 22nd, on Thursday of this week. After that, the nomination would then go to the Senate floor and a vote before the full Senate. That's the road ahead. Back to your phone calls, about 10 minutes or so. We're expecting before members and Judge Barrett return to the committee hearing room to continue today's questions, 30-minute rounds of questions. This is Joshua from Columbus, Ohio, Republican. Joshua, if you were in on those rounds of questions, what would you ask?
Well, I thought Amy did a great job trying to separate the politics of the legislative and executive bodies versus the judicial review aspects of the Supreme Court. And I would ask Judge Barrett what protections the Supreme Court or the country can make to ensure that the Supreme Court is not turned into a political legislative body, but into a ruling body. I would ask her if maybe a constitutional amendment to the Constitution to codify the number of Supreme Court justices on the Supreme Court would maybe help to stabilize the court from not being political but being judicial only.